Trevor, welcome back. Congratulations on calling what you saw with the Fighting Irish.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's every year, every summer, really every off season, depending on what time of year. I'll drive around the country in my own car, my own expense, put in 12,000, 14,000 miles to visit college football programs. And as I drove away from my stop at Notre Dame, I had great confidence that they'd have an elite team this year. And so there was an internal poll at ESPN. 42 people were asked to project who they think would make the playoff. And I was the only one that picked Notre Dame. And that's why, because, I burned the gas to get up there and talk to them.
Okay, let's not bury the lead here. How do you prefer your potatoes? Baked, mashed? What do you like on it? Sour cream, cheese,
fried?
Butter? This is all appropriate with the famous Idaho Potato Bowl.
I don't eat a ton of potatoes now, but I will tell you this, that when I do, there's two choices. If someone can make garlic mashed potatoes right, there's nothing like it.
Okay.
Second to that, but a close second, is tots.
Give me some of your tots.
Yeah. Tots rock.
Trevor, what was your initial reaction to BYU and Western Michigan when it was announced that the two teams would play in the famous Idaho Potatoes Bowl version 2018?
Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's a great sign of progress for the BYU program after what happened last year to make the bowl. Western Michigan is a fair fight. I mean, that'll be a good game. They get that extra 2 weeks of practice. This all is a tangible recognition that BYU is moving in the right direction, and I was really happy to see this come through.
Okay, is this an ideal situation for BYU? Because we were discussing these two trains of thought, Trevor. Would it be better for a compelling matchup like a really good bowl with a Power 5 team or something? Or a game like this where, okay, let's hope BYU gets a win, finishes with a winning record, and moves on. Is this a more ideal situation for BYU than, say, a Power 5 opponent?
Yes. Yes. You always want to play the toughest opponents you can play. And by the way, Western Michigan is got reasons that they're a little bit dangerous for BYU. But you'd love to play another Wisconsin, somebody like that, maybe knock them off. At the same time, what BYU needs is continued traction. I mean, they were in neutral last year. They didn't even have the transmission engaged, and a lot of that was a new system. A lot of that was injuries. They just didn't get into first gear, much less out of first gear. So this year they got into first gear, into second gear. They want to get it up into third gear now and continue their progress. And to do that, I think if they are able to win their bowl game, go into the off season with a positive feeling, be able to tell recruits that they're a bowl champion and they're on the rise, then that's a whole lot better than getting slapped down by a team that has more talent than you do. Right now, BYU does have a lot of talent. They also have a lot of injuries in places that they can't afford to lose people. And so I think Western Michigan is a really good opponent for BYU. It's a fair fight. They have a good offense. There are things that they do well. And if BYU is able to pull off the victory, I think they can be very proud of it.
Lest we forget, the two teams have a common opponent, and Western Michigan beat Northern Illinois 28-21, a team that BYU lost to in Provo 7-6. So to your point, Trevor, Western Michigan, they have some scenarios where they can ball out for sure. Now, BYU does open as a 14-point favorite. What do you think of the line and the experts in the desert putting BYU as more than 2 touchdown favorite there?
I think that's a lot. It depends on which Western Michigan team shows up. I mean, they opened up the season with Syracuse and Michigan, lost both of those, and they ripped off 6 straight wins. Then they lost 3 straight games before they beat Northern Illinois. But that Northern Illinois win, I mean, Northern Illinois was kind of getting ready for the MAC championship and their run into their postseason. Not to take anything away from Western Michigan, but I wouldn't compare that apples to apples. The thing about Western Michigan is that their offense is balanced. I mean, they throw and run well. They've got a 2-headed monster at running back that'll just grind you. And BYU's defensive front is in for a long day. But on the other side of the ball, Western Michigan's defense has really struggled. And I expect this to be a big game for Zach Wilson and a big game for the BYU offensive line. Not that they're not good, but they're not great over on the other side of that ball. And so I think BYU's offense will have a chance to really go into the offseason with a positive note. Now, if they get stopped by Western Michigan, here's your risk. Then it goes into the offseason with a negative note because BYU's offense should score at least 4 or 5 touchdowns against these guys.
Yeah, I think it's important for BYU to win this game for the reasons you outlined. You don't want to have a losing record again. You don't want Kalani Sitake, who has a 500 record currently, to dip below 500 after 3 years. So here we go. Let's hope it's not the weather that Fresno State and Boise State had, Trevor, because that was a crazy Mountain West Conference championship game on that blue turf. Let's hope for cold but not wet weather, right?
Well, whatever it's going to be, both of these teams are used to it. I mean, if it's a blizzard, if it's sleet and ice, BYU coming out of Provo and Western Michigan, they both are used to it. So it'll be an issue for the fans, but I think the teams are ready for anything.
ESPN's Trevor Matich with us on BYU Sports Nation. Now let's take this discussion national and talk about the college football playoff. Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma. Did the College Football Playoff Committee get it right, Trevor?
They got it absolutely right. And as a matter of fact, for the first time since they started this, I'm really happy with what the committee's done. I've got great respect for the committee as a body and as individuals, and it changes, it rotates. This year, there were 6 new faces on a 13-member committee. And according to the committee spokesperson, there were times when there were actual contention in the room as they were debating which team to put at number 4. Some thought it should be Georgia. Some thought it should be Oklahoma. There were even some people agitating for Ohio State, but I've never heard them use the word contention before. And I think that's really good because this committee seemed to focus more on what they saw on tape, what they actually saw happening on the field than past committees. They always watch the games. But in the past, you'd hear the committee spokesperson talk about differentiating teams by the strength of schedule, strength of record, all the various metrics that they would use, and they wouldn't really get around to saying, here's what we saw on tape, right? This committee spokesperson has been talking about that all year long. And really when it came down to putting in Oklahoma, they said that the metrics didn't differentiate 4, 5, and 6, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Ohio State enough to say that one was unequivocally more deserving of that 4th spot. So they went back to the tape, and they fought it out. And they decided that Oklahoma was the most deserving team and the best team to put there. And the fact that so much emphasis was put on what they saw rather than what they read in the numbers really gives me a lot of hope.
I agree. I think Rob Mullins and that committee got it right. Let's talk about this. So UCF, the curious case of UCF, right? I don't think that they deserve to be in the playoff, but do you see at any point a team outside the Power 5, not Notre Dame, obviously they're in, but a group of 5 team getting into the college football playoff at any point in the future? I
don't. I don't. And the reason is that what they need, they can't get. Look at UCF right now. They haven't lost a game in 2 years. They're on a 2-year winning streak and counting. The problem is that they need to schedule top quality Power 5 opponents in non-conference in order to have a chance to get in. In other words, all 4 teams that are in the playoff now, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, have at least 10 wins over Power 5 teams. UCF only played 1 Power 5 team, Pitt, and they smoked them. But that's the only one they even played. So you say, well, they're good. They should schedule Clemson and all the big Power 5. The problem is the Power 5 doesn't want to schedule them because when they schedule a group of 5, the Power 5 wants it to be a team that they could handily beat, that they can get their backups in there for quality minutes. They don't want to play a team that's a potential top 10 team like UCF, so it'll be hard for UCF to schedule what they need non-conference in order to get up there now. Having said that, BYU is not considered a group of 5 team. They're independent, but they're not in the group of 5. It's kind of a weird limbo that they're in that way from a standpoint of definitions. And because of their independence, they can schedule any way they want. If BYU had swept this year's schedule, they would have been in the top 10, and they would have been in the conversation. I don't know that they would have made it, but they would have been in the conversation because when you play Arizona, Cal, Wisconsin, Washington, Boise, teams like that, Utah, you've got enough meat in your schedule to give the committee a reason to look at you as a team that's deserving of consideration. Now, you got to win them all, and BYU is a long ways away from sweeping a schedule like that. But I think BYU has a better chance to make the playoff than any group of 5 team does, just because of the nature of they're not saddled with the conference slate that won't give them any credit for beating a Power 5 team because they're not Power 5 conferences.
ESPN's Trevor Matich with us on BYU Sports Nation. Trevor, let's finish with this. Give us your national championship game projection, and then who you think is going to win it all.
Well, I think it's chalk. You know, both Alabama and Clemson are heavily favored. Alabama will open the playoff with Oklahoma. Clemson plays Notre Dame. Both are heavily favored. I think they'll both win, although there's no guarantee. I can see scenarios that Oklahoma could knock off Alabama and Notre Dame could knock off Clemson. But as we look at it from today, I think that's it. Now you got that big rematch. And it's hard to say who's going to win it. If I had to pick it now, I would pick Alabama. But both teams have shown a little bit of a crack in their solid, front. And so, a lot of it has to do with, will Tua Tagovailoa be fully healthy? He's got a high ankle sprain, had a surgical procedure to kind of treat it. Now, where will he be? If they win the semi and he has a setback in that game, where will the quarterback position be for Alabama? Jalen Hurts did a magnificent job in relief of Tua to come back and beat Georgia, which is one of the great all-time stories of the season, if not the decade in college football. But at the same time, when you've got turmoil at quarterback, it's not good when you're facing an elite defense like Clemson has. So that's sort of the long answer to a short question. If I were to pick it all right now, I'd say Alabama repeats as the champion.
Trevor, here's to a fantastic bowl season, and here's to BYU beating a group of Broncos on the blue turf in Boise.
Yeah.
We appreciate the time as always.
All right, thanks, guys, and go up there and enjoy every kind of potato imaginable. That's going to be a fun bowl game.
You got it. Thanks, Trevor.
All right, guys.
Trevor Matich on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.